Okay, so I have my schedule here. 10:20, that's Sunday. If you want to be prepared, I think William's going to be teaching, and we'll be doing Luke 9:51 through 10:42. Luke 9:51 through 10:42. Okay, so I've been a little casual about getting through my material because I always have another class coming, but tonight I've got to get through because I feel like there's a pretty strong theme that goes through the end of our verses. So I'll try to be a little more disciplined tonight. But in the spirit of being disciplined, why don't we go back into last class and talk about what we see here in Luke 9:1 through 6. And he called the 12 together and gave them power and authority over all demons and to cure diseases. And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal. And he said to them, "Take nothing for your journey, no staff, nor bag, nor bread, nor money. And do not have 2 tunics. And whatever house you enter, stay there, and from there depart. And wherever they do not receive you, when you leave that town, shake the dust from your feet as a testimony against them." And they departed and went through the villages, preaching the gospel and healing everywhere. So, forgive me for making like a business analogy, because I'm not trying to act like, that Jesus' business is a business. But I work with entrepreneurs for a living and guide them through exit planning and preparing to sell their businesses. And there's always a point in a startup entrepreneur's career when he has to sort of decide that it's time for other people to get involved. You know, when you start a business, you don't just start by being like, oh, I do the CEO duties. It's like, no, I'm the CEO, and I'm also the CFO, and I'm also the COO, and I'm also the janitor and the accounts payable and the accounts receivable. I'm also customer service. Anybody relate to this? I do all these things, right? And so we're seeing a turning point here, and really tonight's class really is about turning points. This whole lesson we're going to go through today is about a turning point in Jesus' mission. But this is a turning point. Jesus has spent, in the first 9 chapters up to this point, we have watched him and marveled at the things he can do, and the things he says, and the things that happen when he's around, right? We've been amazed at all the abilities that he has and the way that he can go into other dimensions, heal spirits that are from literally another dimension. He can heal people of other kinds of ailments. He can heal people without even seeing them. He can has the perfect words to say to everyone. And so here we are. We get to this point, and this is the first time we see he pulls these 12 people together and he says, hey, they understand enough. They don't really understand much, but they understand enough about this message that he's like, hey, it's time. It's time for you to go. And it's time for you 12 to go into these villages and to start saying this message that I've been saying to you. And so when he does that, why does he say, take nothing for your journey? No staff, no bag, no bread, no money, and don't have an extra tunic. What's he have in mind here?
They should expect to be paid for what they're doing.
They should?
They should expect to be paid for what they're doing, spreading the word.
So you think that he doesn't want them to take those things because he wants to put the burden on the people that he goes to. They need to take care of him? Okay? Anyone else? Travis?
That's how he started out
Okay.
his ministry. Very minimalistic.
Yeah, it's minimalistic. I don't really know. I don't have like an angle here. Go ahead, Derek.
It's a faith building exercise.
Yeah, that's kind of what I came up with. I thought, you're going to send me on this journey to go door knocking and tell people about what we're supposed to be teaching here, but I don't get to take anything with me. Ryan?
This is kind of a weird example, but when we were first married and I wanted to stay home with Cora, it didn't work on paper at all, at all. We were going to be destitute. And if we needed, but I did anyway. We needed $262.52, and I swear to you, it would appear almost to that amount. So I think he's, saying, take a step out and faith and depend on God.
That's great. Those are great comments. I do think that is what it is. I mean, I think that there is a responsibility on people to help take care of them. I do think that he is trying to say it's a faith-building exercise. I do think that it is the same thing that Jesus had done. And so all those are great answers about what are some of the reasons. What about the part where it says to shake the dust off your feet? People don't receive you. Shake the dust off your feet and move on.
Don't worry about it, just get on with what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah?
Don't look back, look forward.
Don't look back, look forward. I like it. Darrell?
I was in about half of the provinces in China, but there were 2 provinces that I kept returning to over and over again. And the reason that I kept going back is because the message was being so well received there, I didn't have time to waste on a lot of other places where it was not being well received.
Yeah, I like that. One thing that it kind of reminded me of, if you're a C.S. Lewis fan, the story The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, there's this picture in it when they're in Narnia and it's winter and Peter and Lucy are with the beavers, Mr. and Mrs. Beaver, and Edmund disappears. And they're like, where did he go? But Mr. Beaver knows instantly. He's like, I know exactly where he went. He had eaten the Turkish delight. He has gone back to go try to find the witch because he is so enthralled by her power that he wants to go back to her. And Peter and Lucy are like, well, we've got to go to the witch and we've got to find him. We got to go get Edmund and take him out. And Mrs. Beaver is like, no, you can't do that. He doesn't want to be with you right now. He wants to be with the witch. The only one that can save him is Aslan. And Aslan is supposed to be the Christ type in the story. And so in that story, I think it really sort of relates to this idea. If people aren't receptive, don't spend your time trying to convince people of things they're not willing to hear right now. And I think it also points right back to the story of the seed and the sower. Think about that scattering of the seed. And some people are trampling the seed and it's no good. And some people are letting it fall among the rocks and it starts to grow up, but then it gets choked out. And some people have good soil and it starts to yield. I was actually talking to Chase Kelly in the lobby on Sunday. Chase. I was talking to Chase in the lobby on Sunday. And I thought he made a great point. Chase, do you mind to share what you were saying to me about the seed in your life and kind of that picture?
Yeah, I guess about a year ago I was reading that, and I'd always pictured myself as the good soil. And then as I was thinking about it, just if I'm still breathing, then I have a chance to be any of those, or at least 2, 3 of the 4 soils there. So just kind of a reminder that I need to be cultivating the soil of my own heart.
As Chase was telling me that story, I was sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I thought of myself as the good soil too. I never thought about the fact that sometimes I'm the soil on the path, and sometimes I'm the soil in the rock. This idea of the message resonating with us, just like in this story of Narnia that I just told, and just like what Jesus was telling them, like, there's no reason to waste your time if people don't want to hear. You can't twist someone's arm hard enough for them to accept this message. This kingdom is not built on force. It's built on receptive hearts. It's built on broken people, people that recognize this is where I am and I need something else than what I can do on my own. Okay, let's move into tonight's class. Luke 9, 7 through 50. Now Herod the Tetrarch heard about all that was happening. And he was perplexed, because it was said by some that John had been raised from the dead, by some that Elijah had appeared, and by others that one of the prophets of old had risen. Herod said, John I beheaded, But who is this about whom I hear such things? And he sought to see him. Remember last week, or on Sunday, when we talked about this, I think it's Floyd, right? Floyd mentioned this, who is this? And I pulled up this slide saying, who is this? And I think that this is a really important thing about chapter 9. Chapter 9 really is sort of the culmination of the who is this and the answer as sort of the cherry on top. But we see here that here it says, I beheaded John the Baptist, but who is this that I hear such things about? And then we're going to see the feeding of the 5,000. This is indeed a prophet that has come to the world. This is the question of the first 9 chapters of Luke. Who is this man? Who is this person that has all this power to take demons out of people, to heal people of their ailments, to speak in ways we've never heard before, to literally turn the world upside down by the way that he talks? Let's keep reading. On the return, the apostles told him all that they had done. And he took them and withdrew apart to a town called Bethsaida. When the crowds learned it, they followed him, and he welcomed them and spoke to them of the kingdom of God and cured those who had need of healing. Now the day began to wear away, and the 12 came and said to him, "Send the crowd away to go into the surrounding villages and countryside to find lodging and get provisions, for we are here in a desolate place." But he said to them, "You give them something to eat." They said, "We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we are to go and buy food for all these people." For there were about 5,000 men. And he said to his disciples, "Have them sit down in groups of about 50 each." And they did so, and had them all sit down. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing over them. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd. And they all ate and were satisfied. And what was left over was picked up, 12 baskets of broken pieces. I feel like this still connects to the sending out of the 12. He sends them on their mission. I want you to go into these places. I want you to preach the word. I want you to do these things. And then when they come to him, they say, "Hey, we need to send these people back into town. We don't have any food. Should we just send them in, tell them to go back to town, get their provisions?" And he's like, no, you feed them. What's the lesson here?
They can do it.
Say again?
They can do it. He gave them,
They can do it?
yeah.
Faith and trust in him, and I wonder if they thought back to previously what he told them about go out and don't take anything with you. They may have thought, oh, okay, because he's going
Yeah,
to
here we
provide.
are. We're in the desert. We've got no provisions. Have we prepared? None of us teach our kids to live like this. We're like, you're going to go on a journey. You need to take the things that you need. They're in the desert. They have no food. And they say, what do you want us to do? You want us to go into town and buy food for 5,000 people? It's like, no. Feed them. Anna?
Yeah, I just think that Jesus is enough. And whatever it is in your life, if you have faith in Jesus, somehow, some way, he's going to be enough. If you go out, he's going to be enough. If you're in the desert, he's going to be enough.
I love that point. And you know what? I'm not going to pick on any particular faith today, but I will tell you, there are a lot of faiths that point to Jesus that don't think Jesus is enough. I see it all over the place. That say, no, it can't just be Jesus. It's got to be Jesus plus this and this and this and this and this and this. We've got to do all these things. But he's teaching them, Jesus is enough.
Brad, I think he's
Yeah.
giving them every opportunity to be prepared, because he is going to lead them, and then they're going to have to continue on. So any circumstance you can imagine, he's building their faith that he is going to be enough, because pretty soon he's going to be gone, and they're going to have to do it on their own.
That's right. Well, who's the miracle for? Do the 5,000 people realize what's going on? I've always wondered this. Do you think the 5,000 knew? All they were doing is being passed out food. Right? And I've always thought this miracle was for the 12. I don't know if I'm right about that, but that's what it seems like. It seems that this miracle is for the 12. for them to recognize we only have 5 loaves and 2 fishes.
I think it's kind of for both. Like it's definitely for the 12 faith, but in the next chapter, Jesus will call out Chorazin and Bethsaida, where this town where the miracle is being performed, for their lack of belief. Saying if these things have been done in you, if they've been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have believed long ago. So, it's for everyone there, and everyone should see Jesus. And I think particularly the disciples need it after their journey as well. So.
Yeah, for sure.
When the disciples saw the situation, they were saying, "Oh, we can't do it. We're insufficient." But no matter who the miracle was for, the end result was a father feeding 5,000 plus of his children. And so, even if the miracle itself wasn't for every person there, Jesus is teaching his disciples that he's providing. It's not just about the miracle. There is a way, and I'm providing for these people. It's a almost casual act of love.
Yeah, that's great.
I also think Jesus, throughout this, before this, when he was healing the woman with the issue of blood, and then raising Jairus' daughter, driving out demons, all before this, Jesus seems to always be righting what sin's curse has made wrong. Nobody should be dying, because that's not how God created the world. No one should have a disease, because God didn't create the world that way. No one should be hungry, because that's not how it was. And so it seems that Jesus is showing this is what it is meant to be like, and this is what it will be like in the kingdom.
Yeah, great point. I will say one thing, and we're going to move on because we've got more to cover here. But one of the things I will say, I think there's a practical application here. I think that we look at many situations in our life as Christians and say, this probably isn't the best spot for me to do this thing. Things don't look exactly right. Like I don't have enough resources with me. I don't have enough backup. I don't have enough help to do whatever this thing is that I'm going to do. And when Jesus says that, 5 loaves and 2 fishes is essentially like having no food. You have 5,000 men. It's like saying, hey, we actually have nothing. We have 0. And so take these 5 loaves and 2 fish. And, I think that one of the things, kind of back to Anna's point about Jesus being enough, I think that as Christians, that's the challenge for us, is to, we have situations that are sort of our version of 5,000 people that need food, and we don't know how to solve it, except they're like little microcosms of that. And yet, what do? Many times I just tell myself, like, well, it's not a great time. It's not a great time to help here. I don't. My family's not with me. My friends are not with me. I don't know if I want to help this person. I don't know if I want to, try to help this situation. And so I feel like we come with all kinds of justification. And what he's doing right here is just saying, I'm enough. Go do this thing. Start passing out the food. See what happens. Like Ryan said about the $262.52. They didn't have it. But somehow every month, about $262.52 showed up. Every single time. I'm going to move on. Now it happened that as he was praying alone, the disciples were with him. And he asked them, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" And they answered, "John the Baptist, but others say Elijah, and others that one of the prophets of old has risen." Then he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter answered him, "The Christ of God." And he strictly charged and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying, "The Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the 3rd day be raised." And he said to all, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself? For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words Of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. But I tell you truly, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God. Okay, so I said in class 1, sometimes we gotta like zoom out, we gotta have fresh eyes and act like we haven't read this a bunch of times, okay? Like, try to remove what you know. What had he said up to this point that sounded anything like this to these disciples? And I'll just show you what I mean when I say we got to try to remove what we know. Just imagine you didn't know about Jesus dying on a cross at all. Like it's not anything that's in your memory. And then he's talking to you, and after he's fed 5,000 people and cured people of demons and healed these women and done all these things, he turns to you and says, hey, you need to take up your cross daily and follow me. And anyone that tries to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be handed over to the Pharisees and the scribes, and they're going to kill me.
I probably would ask him, what the heck are you talking about?
They didn't understand him at all, what he was talking about, what he was trying to tell them.
And you know what, Bob? I'm not trying to say that I would understand him. I mean, look, you know, when we get to Acts and Jesus ascends into heaven, what do they say as he's ascending? Well, probably, but I'm thinking of something more specific. Hey, hold on. Is now the time? Is this when you're gonna? Is this the kingdom? Here, is this it? Like, are we doing this now, or where are you going? This idea of did they understand? Like, look, I'm fully convinced no one understood anything. Did Mary understand? When Simeon is in the temple and he says, lifts up baby Jesus in chapter 2 or 3, lifts up baby Jesus and holds him up and is like, now I can die and I've seen the Son of God and all this stuff. He says all this stuff, but then he says, Mary, you will be pierced by a sword. And I'm thinking, if I'm Mary, hold on a second, that doesn't sound like King David. Does that sound like King David reigning forever? I don't remember King David having a sword go through him. We're getting to the who is this. We're not there yet. He's starting to say, like, I'm telling you, like, in some ways I look at this, I'm just like, I almost feel sorry for these people who think they're on this certain ride. Like, they know they believe, right? They know they believe, but they're thinking about power and about kicking out Gentiles and about kicking out the Romans and about righting all the wrongs. We're going to finally get what we need. We're going to finally get what God's been promising us. We're His chosen people. It's going to be like Joshua taking the people into the promised land. We're going to rise up, and all those things are true, but it's not the way that they're thinking. Richard.
I think it's around the same time, and I don't think it's in Luke, but in John, you look at that and you say, oh, the Son of Man's going to be, that's what's going to happen. But around the same time in John, chapter 6, verse 53, he says, very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in me. It's like, well, that's not literal, so I do think, and I'm not saying, but I do think about that, I think it would have been very hard to figure out.
Well, and what happens in John when he says that?
Yeah.
What do the people do?
A lot of people get upset about it and are like...
It says many people left him and did not follow him anymore. He says, if you want eternal life, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And it says, many disciples left him and did not follow him again.
Trying to put myself in the shoes of specifically the apostles, the disciples at this point. They're trying to come to terms with the fact that Jesus is a king, but not in the way that they were expecting. We were thinking power and kicking out these enemies, and sort of if I'm a follower of that, I'm sort of going to assume that maybe I will be crucified. For being his follower, I will be martyred and all of this. And up till now, the way he does everything is upside down. He's not talking to military people. He's talking to farmers. And then he sends me and these other disciples out to act out his power. So I'm maybe starting to buy into that. And then all of a sudden he goes back to what I would expect him to say, which is, you got to be willing to die for me. It's like, hold on, I was just getting used to this other paradigm. Now, is this going to be a physical kingdom? Are we going to be persecuted? And you know you're not going to be accepted by the leaders. Maybe that's why they tried to get him not to go to Jerusalem later. If I'm putting myself in their shoes, it's like, which way do you want me to think? What's going on?
I think that's great. I actually think you're right. I think that when the king came, they probably thought, we're going to battle, and we're going to win with our king. But then what they've seen is, hey, we don't even maybe have to go to battle. This guy snaps his fingers and everything's made right. But then we get this sobering message. They don't even know what the cross is about yet. It says you need to take up your cross daily and follow me. If you try to save your life, you're going to lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you'll find it. The message is changing. And it's not changing in the way like, this is what it was always intended to be. But he is letting them in on more. This is a big turn in this book as he starts to set them out. And then he's like, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm going to die. And he doesn't say it exactly, but you're all going to die too. And not the way you want to.
What's that? What did you mean by that?
Well, Peter's going to be crucified upside down. When Peter sees him on the beach after he's risen from the dead, and he reminds him of his 3-time denial and says, do you love me? And he's like, I love you. And do you love me? Yes, I love you. And on the 3rd time it says he was hurt. And he says, Peter, when you were young, you went where you wanted to go and you did what you wanted to do. But when you're old, you're going to go where you don't want to go. And you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do. And the history on that, the tradition says that Peter refused to be crucified right side up. That he said, I'm not worthy of it. Which sort of begs the question, probably 20-something years ago, Mike Coffey did a Wednesday night talk that I still remember at this church that was about Peter and about this change in Peter. How did Peter go in 50 days from a man who denied Jesus to people who were very insignificant to one who says, I don't care if you kill me or not. I saw a man rise from the dead. Do whatever you want with me. And they did. They killed him. I told you the story of James, the brother of Jesus. Most all these stories, we have traditions that we can point to that say that they died very painful and terrible deaths. They were put to death for their belief. I need to keep moving. Thank you for all the comments. All right, so 8 days after he tells them what's going to happen, this happens. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, he took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face was altered, and his clothing became dazzling white. And behold, 2 men were talking with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him were heavy with sleep. When they became fully awake, they saw his glory, and the two men stood with him. And as the men were parting from him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. As he was saying these things, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen.
Brad, I just usually skip this part, just so you know. Like, I just have never understood this. Like, I don't get what the reason of why it, like Jesus, why would Jesus need to meet with them? And then why were they half asleep and then, or fully asleep and then they woke up and then they never talked about it again? I know, I mean, it's clearly very, it's important. Not like anything, it's not important, but it always makes me think like, I think I'm just going to keep reading, on past this, and ask the question.
Well, I don't know that I know the answer, but I will say, who is this?
The Old Testament and the prophets.
Who is Jesus? You know, I think we are culminating this who is this theme from chapters 1 through 9 in this moment. This story that we just read is in Matthew, it's in Mark, it's in Luke. This transfiguration is important. He goes up on the mountain and he completely changes form into a spiritual being, right? He shows he's not just some regular old man here. This is, as God says, this is the chosen one. And I don't know why they're up there, but sometimes when I read, I always think, what would people think if this wasn't in here? You know one of the things I've wondered? Would people possibly wonder how Moses and Elijah compared to Jesus if we didn't have this story? I mean, think about when Jesus is in the book of John, and they're all bragging about, we are the sons of Abraham. And he says, before Abraham was, I am. If we didn't have that, do we know where Jesus ranks with Abraham? Of course, Hebrews gives us a lot of ideas about where does he rank in the hierarchy. But in this gospel message, I can see how it's important for someone to say, let's put this person that represents all the prophets, let's put this person that represents all the law, and let's put Jesus all on a mountain. And let's let Peter do what Peter does. Right? Let's let him blurt something out. Maybe he was just having like a loss for words at the moment. But let's let Peter do what Peter does so that we can say, no. Don't miss the context here. It also says that Moses and Elijah were talking, some versions say, about his exodus, which I really like that. Because, Joshua, same name Jesus, led them into the exodus. And it says exodus in some of the translations. Mine says departure in this version I'm reading. But they are talking about his departure, which he would soon accomplish in Jerusalem. Yes?
My footnote here for verse 31, it's going right in with this. It says, to cease is literally exodus. This is an important allusion and is central to the Old Testament event of salvation. It is unique to Luke's account of the transfiguration. The comparison is made between Jesus' death and the journey to salvation that the nation of Israel experienced under Moses. Jesus' journey would take him to the side of God, from which he will return to exercise authority.
Interesting. Got 7 minutes, Brett. I'm doing good though.
we have all the examples in the Bible of people going up on a mountain and having an encounter with God. And then here's this example. We've had Moses who died on a mountain, and we have Elijah who had his experience on top of the mountain, and then we have Jesus. So this time, the encounter with God is God is with us. It's Emmanuel. They're on the mountain with them. And then God also giving his testimony that this is my son. So they have this personal encounter with Emmanuel, God with us there on top of the mountain.
I like that. Okay, so I just totally goofed up all the slides. Let's see here. Any more comments on Transfiguration? I want to move on. Floyd.
I just thought it was very interesting as I was reading it. You know, we had all these questions about who is this, and so we get to verse 20, and Jesus asks the question, who is this, of himself, and of course, Peter answers, you're the Christ, and it's from that point, so that's where I see a sort of a transition. From that point, Jesus starts talking about the mission of the Christ, and then this miraculous appearance here sort of reinforces that. It's like that is a turning point right there in verse 20. All of these things, who is this, lead us to the conclusion he is the Christ. Now that they've established that, it just immediately goes into that new theme, the mission of the Christ, to suffer and die and all of these things.
Thank you. And the other theme too, you know, when Josh started the class, he said, look, this book is going to be divided into kind of two sections. We're going to have a section where we're in Nazareth and Galilee and sort of his local mission there. And then we're going to have this turning point where he turns his eyes towards Jerusalem. We're there. Him unveiling and saying clearly, I am the Christ. Peter saying, you are the Christ. Him sending out the 12. Him going up on the mountain. This is all part of that turn towards Jerusalem as he's going to go accomplish the mission.
You asked the question, what would it look like if we didn't have these passages? It would look a lot like the Jewish religion does today, or even Islam today, where they only have partial pieces of the whole puzzle. And it would be, well, what you see.
Yeah.
That's what we would look like without these.
Okay, let's keep reading. Verse 37, on the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him, and behold, a man from the crowd cried out, Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he is my only child. And behold, a spirit seizes him, and he suddenly cries out. It convulses him so that he foams at the mouth and shatters him, and will hardly leave him. And I begged your disciples to cast him out, but they could not. Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. While he was coming out, the demon threw him to the ground and convulsed him. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit and healed the boy and gave him back to his father. And all were astonished at the majesty of God. The three accounts, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all record the Transfiguration. And in all three accounts, when Jesus comes down from the mountain, they encounter this boy. And I can't help but think that it is a stark reminder of the glory of God on the mountaintop, and then the Son of God coming back down to earth to see the evil that is in this world. What would be worse than, as a parent, to come down and have this situation with your son, convulsing on the ground in front of Jesus uncontrollably? What could be worse than seeing your only child? He is my only child, the man says. And look at him as he convulses on the ground. And even Jesus seems to have been on a high from the mountain and says, "Ugh, how long are you guys going to need me? I'm not going to be here." And then heals him. I feel like this is in here to be a stark contrast in reality of the glory of God versus the darkness and sin that entraps this world. It is a picture of coming down to the earth, to the reality of the things that we deal with on earth, and facing it head on. But while they were all marveling at everything he was doing, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let these words sink into your ears. The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men." But they did not understand this saying, and it was concealed from them, so that they might not perceive it. And they were afraid to ask him about this saying. An argument arose among them as to which of them was the greatest. But Jesus, knowing the reasoning of their hearts, took a child and put him by his side and said to them, "Whoever receives this child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me. For he who is least among you is the one who is great." John answered, "Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him, because he does not follow with us." But Jesus said to him, "Do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you." I wanted to make sure we got through the reading tonight because I feel like we're getting sort of a complete picture in chapter 9 of the Son of God unveiling himself to these people. Here is who I am. You want to know who I am? I'm God. And now he's going to set his eyes towards Jerusalem. I got 1 minute. Any comments?
Brad, I'd never realized that in verse 49 where they say someone else is driving out demons, it's right after where they weren't able to drive out a demon. And I had not placed those two places together.
Thank you, everyone.